Another edition of the Lines MLB Futures Betting Breakdown with Mo Nawara, not going to bother spelling out his Twitter handle as it's on the screen, and myself, Eli Herskovich. Remember to follow the Lines on Twitter at The Lines US. As always, we're presented by thelines.com, breaking down Mo Nawara's current MLB division futures winners at the moment. He has two in his pocket. He also has a couple of other MLB futures bets, and you can find both of those betting breakdowns in video form on the Lines YouTube channel. But before we get started, remember to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications whenever the Lines releases a video on any sports betting market. And as always, join the Lines Discord channel to get notifications whenever we place bets. So then you could head over to thelines.com and find the best of the number at a variety of legal sports books. But without further ado, Mo, let's start in the AL West, looking at a division with the defending World Series champs. The Houston Astros are the odds-on favorite to win the AL West. Highest price in the market, I believe, at Bet Rivers, minus 245. Best number on Houston, though, to repeat as division champs, as they've done so for the last however many years. Houston minus 180 over at DraftKings. Seattle next up at plus 310, right around that number. Then it's the Angels at plus 850, and Texas right around the same number. I don't think you're going to be betting on Oakland to win this division. So which team are you looking at here in the AL West, Mo?
I like the Angels quite a bit at a very, very long number. They've been hanging out mostly around like plus 800 at most of the books, but there has been a plus 1200 available on Caesars for quite some time. And I see now BetMGM also has a plus 1000. That's the first price that's come close to this plus 200. So people must still be getting excited for these other AL West teams, which I understand in some cases. Like when I look at the Rangers, for example, like they have a really strong pitching staff now on paper compared to what they were running out there last year. I think they had one of the worst staffs in baseball last year. And now they've got Jacob deGrom. He's the best on a per batter basis, the best pitcher in the world probably. Martin Perez was very good last year. I think he's going to hang on to his gains. John Gray was also pretty solid. Same deal there. Getting out of Colorado seems to have helped him. It's a good staff, but a lot of injury risk on that team. So I am a little bit off it on the Rangers. And then when I look at these other teams, I think there's holes on these other teams too we can talk about in a minute. And I'll start off by saying when I'm looking at the Angels, they've been a frustrating team for me the last few years. Last year was, I think, the first year in like the last four that I didn't take any Angels futures. I had World Series futures on them like 3 years in a row or something. I don't think that's crazy again this year either. I think they're hanging around 50-1. That seems like a fine wager as well. I think 12-1 to win this division is kind of insane though, because combination of the Angels getting quite a bit better, I think, and Houston not being quite as strong as they've been in past years. So we all know Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, these guys are the cream of the crop, two of the top 5, maybe 10 players in baseball. It's been the supporting cast that hasn't been there, plus Mike Trout's injuries. I think that the projections are pretty optimistic on Trout as far as his availability, but if he can stay healthy, which is obviously in question, but we're getting 12-1 here. So it's not like we're risking a ton in this spot. So if he can stay healthy and Shohei Ohtani has something close to what he's done the last couple of years, definitely not saying we should be expecting him to be the best baseball player in the world like he's been the last couple of years. That's obviously a tall order to repeat. But the supporting cast just looks quite a bit more solid to me this year. Anthony Rendon, again, another health risk, but the projections are in on him still. I mean, they think he's very good, and he was good last year while he was on the field. And Hunter Renfroe, Brandon Drury, these are new pickups. They were pretty good last year, and Brandon Drury especially seemed like he took a step forward. The Angels are running out guys like Andrew Velasquez, just guys you just don't want to have on the field. I mean, this is a replacement level guy. I think just avoiding having a bunch of replacement level guys is going to be huge out there. Another one is Jared Walsh, another guy who's coming off an injury, a surgery where if he was a pitcher, I'd be like, okay, his career's probably over. There's not too much data on thoracic outlet syndrome, I believe it is. There's not too much data on what it does to hitters, but we know like with stuff like Tommy John, it's not that big of a deal for hitters generally. So I'm hoping Jared Walsh can just be a solid average first baseman again. I mean, he was pretty good before last year, and last year was just a disaster when he was hurt. Logan O'Hoppe at catcher is one of the better prospects in the majors. I like the bench, and I really like what they've done to the rotation. They had a solid rotation last year, but they didn't rest on their laurels. They brought in Tyler Anderson, who the Dodgers helped take a huge step forward. He should be above average this year. And Reed Detmers seems to be improving. Second half of last season, he was having some good starts. So I think a lot of potential in this rotation. Maybe a little bit too left-handed, but everything looks pretty solid from top to bottom besides the bullpen. But that's usually an area where you can get some in-season additions / have a regression to the mean go your way in terms of just, it's small samples. It's pitchers who have a lot of volatility generally, so I'm hoping that they're just a little better just based on that. But even if they aren't, I think the Angels can probably grab some people on the cheap. Usually if you're a contender, you can find a couple of relievers at the deadline.
And Mo has a full write-up on his Angels futures bet division, futures bet to win the AL West over at thelines.com. And looking at a team that upgraded its bullpen last year at the deadline, speaking of upgrading your relief arms, but didn't win the division, fell short as their offense really sputtered down the stretch. Byron Buxton, obviously being banged up, didn't help things for Minnesota. I'm speaking of the Minnesota Twins, which are priced as the second shortest odds to win the AL Central, behind the defending champion Cleveland Guardians at plus 135. So then it's Minnesota around plus 225, best price in the market over at Caesars Sportsbook, which you could find, again, price shop at thelines.com for all of your MLB futures needs. The Twins plus 240 at Caesars. Then the White Sox around the same number. Again, this kind of fluctuates in the market depending on the book. The White Sox have the second shortest odds at some books. Minnesota the second shortest odds at others. As a White Sox fan, I think Minnesota's the better bet, and Mo will get into why here in a second. And then Detroit at around plus 2,200 and Kansas City at 30-1. So, Mo, we both had Twins futures last season. Didn't work out for either of us, obviously. So, break down why the people should follow suit here again in 2023.
Yeah, Twins, another team that has tortured me the last few years. I think this is my third or fourth straight season taking the Twins. This one, unfortunately, not as good of a bet as the Angels, I don't think, especially now. I got closer to plus 300 on this one, and that was still hanging around until I think maybe the last week or so. It's down to plus 240. I still think it's worth a bet at plus 240 because I honestly think the Twins should probably be favored over the Guardians. The projections basically have these two teams dead even. So even if you just straight up follow the projections, you're going to get value here. As far as the way this team compares to the Guardians and the White Sox, though, I think they're right there with the Guardians. I agree with the projections. That's very close. Cleveland has a very good starting rotation at the top with Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie. I think the back of the rotation may be a little bit questionable, and the lineup was pretty weak last year. I don't think it's going to be very good again this year. They didn't really make any major additions. Josh Bell, he's solid. That's about it. The bullpen should be tremendous again, but when I look at the Twins, I see a good team from top to bottom, honestly. Where, again, I look at the White Sox, very, very top-heavy team, a team that with the way baseball season works, 162 games, there's going to be injuries. There's going to be attrition. I don't think the White Sox can stand any of that. The Guardians don't have a lot of depth either, but they have a lot of prospects that they can bring up that are very good. They have one of the best farm systems. So I think if they have some injuries, they at least have prospects they can bring up. The White Sox have a really terrible farm system and not much at the back half of either the rotation or the lineup. So I just think they're not set up well to have anything bad happen, which when you're playing 162 games, bad things are going to happen. It's just the way it works. And then when I look at the Twins, they have depth, they have talent across the board. Don't really see any major weaknesses on this team. This was one of the best offenses in MLB last year. They believe they were 6th in WRC plus, and they should be pretty good again. Top 10, I think, for sure this year. Jose Miranda's already hurt, though, so already taking a couple hits there. I just saw that today. And we know Byron Buxton's going to get hurt, but
right.
I don't believe the projections that think he's going to play 110 games. We talked about that. That's obviously a little bit crazy to expect, but bringing back Carlos Correa was massive. He was one of the best players in baseball last year, close to 5 WAR, I think. And I really like the trade they made to bring in Pablo Lopez. I think that was a really big win for them. Luis Arraez, a solid hitter, multi-positional, but a guy who doesn't hit for a lot of power. So his value is going to be heavily dependent on what's happening to balls in play. It's going to fluctuate. I don't think he's probably as good as he performed last year. They sold high on him. I think that's good. And they brought in Pablo Lopez, who is an above-average pitcher. Their staff is just a bunch of above-average pitchers, average to above average, a bunch of number 2s / number 3s. But the depth is good here. I mean, Kenta Maeda, Tyler Mahle as your last 2 guys. That's really good.
I like Mahle a lot.
Yeah, these are good pitchers. I mean, they are solid pitchers as long as, we'll see what Kenta Maeda looks like. Obviously, he's a big health risk coming off. I think he missed the whole season last year, Tommy John or close. So we don't know what they're going to get, but they even have some pretty solid depth in the upper minors. I mean, Bailey O'Bear, he's been a pretty good pitcher over a reasonably decent sample. 130 innings, a lot can happen. Obviously, he could just get lucky, but he's been solid in 130 innings, and he's not even in the rotation right now. So that's good depth. And the bullpen, they made serious additions to that bullpen last year when they brought in Jorge Lopez. So he was tremendous for the Orioles. And Joan Duran, he might be one of the best relievers in baseball, and people don't really talk about him, but he was incredible for them last year. Throws 101 or whatever. So this is just a really talented team. I think they're right there with the Guardians. And one thing I know is if anybody out of those 2 teams is making additions at the deadline, it's going to be Minnesota, because Cleveland is running their team like they need to pinch as many pennies as possible. So I think that can help the Twins as well, because these projections don't take into account those sorts of things. The writers always talk about, you have to remember these projections are based on the teams right now, and they've consistently underestimated teams that make in-season additions, like the Yankees and the Blue Jays. These teams outperform their projections because they buy at the deadline. So I think Twins should be buyers, I would think, and I don't see a way Cleveland is going to part with their top prospects. So I think that should help the Twins.
That is Mo Nawara. Follow him on Twitter at Mo Nawara. Remember to follow the Lines on Twitter at the Lines US. And you can follow me on Twitter at Eli Herskovich. Head over to play.thelines.com to have a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card in our daily pick'em contest. Again, for more details, head over to play.thelines.com. Remember to check out Mo's Futures articles on the Twins and the Angels for more in-depth breakdowns, and he'll have a lot more coming before the season gets underway. Many more futures bets to be made. So for Mo, for myself, Eli Herskovich, thanks for checking out another edition of the MLB Futures Breakdown here on the Lines YouTube channel.